Hello, I'm Lucas from Global. Written language is undeniably one of the greatest human advances and has paved the way for the advanced civilizations we know today. When reflecting upon the evolution of written language, it is amazing to compare the different methods humans used to transcribe oral tongues, be it syllabaries, alphabets, or ideograms. Naturally, each writing system is more suited to a particular group of languages, and this usually works for the better. But sometimes the matter is not that simple, and this is what happened for Vietnam. This is Vietnam and Romanisation. Vietnam is a coastal state in Southeast Asia with a population of over 96 million spread across 332,000 square kilometers. It boasts a mostly subtropical climate in the north and a tropical climate in the south, and is very famous for these lush landscapes. It is currently a communist state led by a single Marxist-Leninist socialist party, but has seen many different forms of government in its history, and this will be very important for today's video. If we start by plotting the different types of scripts in Asia on a map, we will see there is great diversity. The Tibetan alphabet, the Burmese writing system, Hanzi Chinese characters, Korean Hangul, and Japanese hiragana to cite but a few. Yet Vietnam somehow uses the Latin alphabet. To understand how and why this came to be, we must go back in time. Civilization truly started in Vietnam in the 1st century BCE with the cultivation of rice. The country was ruled by several dynasties, with Khmer rule sometimes interrupted by periods of Chinese governance. Chinese culture therefore propagated into Vietnam, and the aforementioned Hanzi characters were employed to transcribe Vietnamese. But this was far from ideal. Linguistically, Vietnamese is an Austroasiatic language which is very different from the neighbouring Sino-Tibetan Chinese language. Whilst Chinese characters consist of an initial consonant sound, final vowel sound, and tone, this is not the case for Vietnamese, which relies on a much wider repertoire of vowels and consonants. Secondly, there are thousands of Chinese characters which made learning very difficult, especially in a time where literacy rates were abysmal even in the educated middle class. Korea was faced with the same problem, and in the 15th century they decided to abandon the Chinese writing system and instead adopted an alphabetical script called Hangul. This resulted in a great improvement of the literacy rate. But Vietnam did not follow this approach and instead crafted additional characters, similar to those in Chinese, to represent all sounds in Vietnamese. This new writing system became known as Chu Nom. Incidentally, Chu Nom made it even more complicated to learn to read and write, but also brought about some of Vietnam's most prized cultural assets. These include the famous epic tale of Keu, an epic poem dating back from the 19th century which narrates the repeated sacrifices a woman made for her family. Vietnam's history changed drastically when the first Portuguese traders from Macau arrived in the 16th century. European delegations and missionaries visited Vietnam, and by the 19th century most of it had fallen under French colonial domination. The Jesuits arrived in Vietnam with the goal of converting as many people as possible to Christianity. Discussing their methods and the subsequent ethics of such missions is not the purpose of this video, but the order's legacy lives on to this day in Vietnam's writing system. Indeed, in 1651, the French scholar Alexandre Rode published the Dictionarium Anamiticum Lusitanum et Latinum, a Portuguese, Vietnamese, Latin dictionary. In it, he transcribed Vietnamese pronunciation into the Latin alphabet. This led to the development of Chu Quoc Nu, a Romanized version of Vietnamese. Let's leap forward in time to 1910, when Chu Quoc Nu was enforced by the French colonial powers to both cut off the old Imperial Vietnamese elite and to deprive the people of their literary and cultural heritage. Emperor Kaidin subsequently declared the traditional writing system abolished in 1918, and Romanized Vietnamese was taught in schools to propagate its use. It is still the major writing system used in Vietnam today, and many Vietnamese say it is a better, easier alternative to writing their language. Suppressing and erasing archaic culture is sadly quite common in colonial states, and may lead people to wrongly believe that this colonial governance has always been this way, and is thereby legitimate. Before I thoroughly researched this video, I naively believed that Romanisation was a product of the communist government after the Vietnam War and reunification. It is little known, but during the Long March, Mao Zedong dreamed of Romanizing the Chinese language to better educate the masses and catch up with the West. He was faced with intense criticism from his comrades and eventually dropped the idea. The intricacies of writing and the power it holds, being both a vector of communication and cultural prosperity, are highly compelling. This was the last video in this first series, but I may be making more later. In the meantime, there are other standalone videos and series planned for Global. To be sure not to miss out, please do consider subscribing. It would truly help the channel out, for a budding channel like Global is but rarely promoted by the YouTube algorithm. Keep on exploring. Goodbye.